Welcome back to Steam-Powered Scoundrels, a Malifaux podcast. Episode 94, First and 10, Academic. Hey friends, quick note from Editor Roman here. We've mentioned it in passing a few times, but this year's Good Things Happen is coming up on June 26th through 28th, right across the river from St. Louis. Check the episode notes for relevant links on how you can help fight kids' cancer by registering to come play fun, wacky games. Or if you can't make it, donations are always appreciated and will work towards our stretch goals of making the Scoundrels do wacky things for your entertainment. Thank you. Now on with the show.
And welcome back to Steam-Powered Scoundrels. And another one without a cold open. I'm tired, so I'm just going to have to deal with that. We've got another First and 10, technically, which is still falls under the Steam-Powered Scoundrels banner, but is a different format that we So, for those of you that aren't familiar with this format, one of us takes a brand new keyword that we were unfamiliar with. We play, we write our notes on it, we go over the cards, we figure out what we think it's going to play like, and then over the course of 10 games, we figure out exactly how much of that was true, how much of that changed, what we actually discovered about the model. It's mostly there to get people to have a better vibe on starting a keyword versus just hearing someone who is a complete expert on it talk about it. So with me are our noob again, Roman. Say hi.
Hi.
I swear the next one will be me.
Are you still working on that one?
In your defense, I keep doing these after, going to a tournament and soloing the crew, so it's just bam, there's 3 games, and usually more like 5, because I'll get a game or 2 in before the tournament with them, so... Turns out if you can speedrun the first half of them, it goes faster.
In my defense, I don't really have a local meta. I've got one person I play games with, so I can only throw so much of a single keyword at him before I've got to change things up. So I'm waiting on my last 2 games for Frontier, but y'all out there can look forward to it. And we have, besides Roman, our expert, Cole. Say hi.
Hello.
Introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Cole. I've been playing Arcanist for what feels like forever. I've known Roman because we've been arguing on the weird forums for a decade now, and then eventually said, hey, you're pretty cool, let's hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see me at most of the events if you're anywhere in the Midwest.
Yeah, and you can hear both of our lukewarm takes on Arcanists in Danger Planet's most recent Arcanist video.
Oh yeah, that did come out finally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, and before we go too much further, Doug, what should people know about at the end of June?
Things Happen is coming up, and hopefully this will get out within a reasonable amount of time so we can actually advertise it again, because I think the first plug we make of that is still being edited by me. Oh god, I'm so bad at this. Yes, it is a 2 or 3 day tournament weekend. We've got 3 different events. We've got the Cutthroat cage match rule set, which in this time we are going to be using a stipend, so everyone gets the same amount of money like the actual Cutthroat Kitchen game show. However, if you want to use your own money to give yourself just a little bit of extra stuff, we're still allowing that, but no more trying to track 50 different pledges and saying who wants to give money where and whatnot. That ended up being a huge mess. So that's on Friday, and then the big tournament, the Voxcasters Open, is on Saturday and possibly Sunday, depending on how many people we get. That is going to be 3 or 5 rounds of good old-fashioned Malifaux 4th Edition goodness, and then Saturday night, after we're done with the first day of the tournament, or the tournament itself, we're going to go to a local drinkery called Global Brew Pub. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to play ourselves some 4th Edition Bonanza Brawl. We've solidified the rules, more or less. I still need to get a few more playtest games in. We should have a deck or 2, so folks will be introduced to that or enjoy it possibly for the first time in 4th Edition. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope to see you out here. We're going to be raising money for a few cancer charities. I remember my local one being Children's Cancer Connection, then there is the big one, St. Jude, and I honestly forgot what the local one to St. Louis is, but I guess that's the other thing. This is taking place in the Illinois side of St. Louis, again, this year. Same place as it was last year, Impact Gaming in Fairview Heights.
Yep.
Did you say a specific date?
It's the 26th, 27th, and 28th of June, and we will also have links in the show notes for all of the specifics, in case you don't want to keep, hitting go back 15 or 30 seconds, wait, I didn't hit that specific detail in what Doug said.
Yes. We got some links going, got the tournaments up. We're going to be using BiggerHat this time for the tournament tracking. This should be interesting.
I saw they watched that. I haven't poked around at that yet. Let me know how that goes.
It's pretty neat. Gave it a quick test drive before I decided that's what we're going to do for good things. So, all right. We are talking... We never said what keyword we're talking about, did we?
We didn't.
What is that keyword, Roman?
It'll probably be in the title.
Maybe a little bit. Would we have a title that would, tell people things?
Give you any information on what the show is about? No, probably not.
No, not at all. The show is about shit posting. For this keyword, I decided to go back to school, specifically to a keyword I have not really played since second ed, where I played it 2 or 3 games, said, wow, this is just steamrolling everyone, and put it on the shelf, which was very sad because I was excited about it. That's right, we're talking Sandeep, we're talking academic.
Yay!
I'll try and keep the learning and school jokes to a minimum. But,
no, you won't.
I don't believe you.
You goddamn liar.
That's fair. Regardless, I did my homework for this one.
There's going to be a lot of sighing in this episode, I think.
Yep. I would like to see the metrics when this comes out for a few weeks. How many people just leave right at that instance?
I think we should have... Yeah, I think we should have Nate edit this one, so for every sigh, we get another ding sound.
Oh. Yeah, we could try and force them to do it.
Or I don't know, a just disappointed scream.
Well, academic keywords, obviously, it's some kind of professor, right?
Yeah, technically. So, academic, Sandeep, we are... In general, we're talking about different elemental magics and things. One of those elements is beating people in the face with a large mace. So, I'm going to start with my initial read on these, and I start with the crew cards whenever I do these, just to kind of get the idea of what each version of the crew is going to do, and then I look at the title to see how they support that. So, initial read, I jump to the Formless Mantra, which is the Quiet Flame Sandeep, or aka Face Beater Sandeep. Immediately, this lets allies, whenever they take the prepare action, they may gain an insight token, which I'm like, okay, that's widespread throughout the crew. You're going to be playing a lot with insight, which means we're playing with a little bit of card manipulation, which is very cool. So clearly insight will be important. They also get a magic shield defensive for elemental shielding. It's once per activation. After you take damage while within 6 inches of another friendly elemental, you gain an insight. So again, insight, very important. Also, elementals are important. This also gives you 3 tactical actions. They are all signatures, and every one of your folks but non-gammon can take them. Non-gammon academic, I should say, so non-gammon allies, essentially. They're all signatures, none of them have a flip, but the cost is you have to remove an insight token to take them. So immediately, all of your non-gammon have a lot of flexibility just because of this. The 3 we have here they're all mantras. You have Fury, it's a 3-inch pulse. Enemies get burning or shielded in that area.
Injured.
Burning and injured. I'm jumping around on my notes. It'd be weird if you gave your enemies shielded. That'd be funky. You also have your Mantra of Rebuke. Same 3-inch pulse. Enemy models within range have to discard a card, or they're moved 3 inches. Hey, look. Basically, free movement of the offensive variety. Or card reduction. Great either way. And then finally, the Mantra of Travel, move this model up to 4 inches. It's not a walk. You can get out of engagement. Always a fantastic thing. All of these are great. Tons of tools in the toolbox just from the crew card. I gotta say, just reading this crew card made me really excited to play this crew, just by itself. So that's the Quiet Flame Sandeep. The other version is the Breathe the Aether, which is with our Elemental Sandeep, our Font of Magic. And this is a little different. Our friendly living academic model, so none of your gammon or anything, get 2 actions. One is an attack, the other is a tactical. The attack is a 6-inch sparkle magic versus willpower. It does 3 damage. You can do it once per activation. If it kills the target, you summon a gammon in base contact before the killed target is removed. So, effectively, all of your non-gammon now have a 6-inch base 3. You don't get raises from it, but it's also 6 versus willpower. So you're quite often going to be 1 up on that, as long as you're targeting the right thing. So, potentially very cool there. But you can also see, since you're focusing on your living academics, that may adjust how you are building the crew compared to the other version, where you want a certain number of elementals to get your elemental shielding to get your insight. The other action this gives is a tactical action called Summon Golem. It costs 2 stones.
What's it do?
You kill, as a cost, in addition to those 2 stones, you kill 2 friendly elemental minions within range, aka Gammon. You do not infuse any stones when they are killed. And you summon a golem, the range is 6 inches, by the way, and you summon a golem academic model with 6 health in base contact with the model who took this. So effectively, if you have 2 gammon within a foot of each other, and the model you're taking this action with is in the middle of that line, as an action you just go, 2 stones, gammon are dead, here's a brand new golem. Now, it has to be a golem that's not on the table currently, because they're unique. So it's expensive. You gotta have the gammon, you gotta have them in place, you gotta have the stones, you gotta have the action to spend on it. But just the ability to go, hey look, a golem, even if it's only at 6 wounds, can be pretty spicy.
It's probably worth mentioning that all of the gammon have demises.
Yes.
And sometimes they're really useful. Sometimes you just want to kill the gammon. The golem's kind of a, happy side effect.
That is definitely something I learned while going... That is something I didn't pick up on and put together initially when reading through these, but it was definitely something that kind of hit about the 3rd or so game with this version of the keyword. Great call out there, Cole. So my initial note on that was, this seems situationally good, especially since your minions can do it, as long as they're the living academics. And I had a note passed there of, hopefully there's healing in keyword to make it worth the stones, and just in general, like I said before, for the other action, giving everyone a base 3 attack. Generally good. Alright, those are the crew cards. Thoughts, questions, etc. before we move on?
How much do you find yourself changing your list building one version of Sandeep to the other? Because they do, from the crew card, look like they want a different composition of academics versus elementals. Breathe the Aether, you probably want more cheap academics, like the Oxfordian mages, just for volume of those min 3 attacks. How much you changing?
A decent amount. I would say the core kind of stays the same, but that's largely because 2 or 3 of the models are they cover multiple things you want to do anyway. Because as we're going to get to on the titles, one of the things I noticed with the Font of Magic Sandeep, the summoning one that we just talked about, there are aspects of his card that I find... I don't want to say they work specifically contrary to the crew card, but I found them to be more of you have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and you have to decide kind of game by game which ones you expect to use, because you're never going to use all of them in one game. So kind of focusing on which tools in his toolbox you want to use, I found to make the crew play, or the crew build differently, almost more than which title am I bringing. I also should say with this, while I soloed this crew for my 10 games. I think I actually ended up getting 11 before I jumped to another one. But there were definitely plenty of games with this crew where I'm like, I'm glad that this crew can do this pool. But me personally, outside of this first intent, I don't think I would ever take them into it, just because I would bring another crew that I know better and or I feel could do them better.
I feel like Sandeep is a good generalist in most cases, but he's rarely the best at something.
Yes, ultimately that's kind of where I ended up too. Asterisks, depending on what your other masters are on your bench. So, like, turns out I have...
I'm assuming you have the entire faction to pick from when I'm saying that.
Yes. But, like, for me, turns out I like Colette, and I know how to play her pretty well. There are plenty of pools where I'm like, this is probably the right one to bring Font of Magic Sandeep, but why would I bring him if I could bring Colette instead in this pool, unless I need specifically some of the stuff he does for the matchup? But we'll get to that as I kind of get into my thoughts as I found out more what's going on. All right, quickly jumping to the titles and totems now that we've seen their crew cards. I'm going to go ahead and start on Font of Magic. So on our summoning guy.
Okay.
He has Essence of Power, which is a model that almost no one I know has. This is definitely one I had to build a proxy for, because since 2nd edition, I think I've wanted to hire it once. So...
Yeah, I got one, like, at the end of 2nd on clearance, because, like, I own, like, the faction except for this model. Maybe it'll be useful someday. And hey, look, here we are.
There we go. All right, so my notes on these guys were, this is kind of a weird duo. Between the two of them, they add more golem things, and here we kind of see why. Sandeep himself can borrow attacks from elemental allies within 10 inches. He only has one printed attack on his card. It does no damage, but it summons a Gammon. Possibly with an elemental binds upgrade. We'll get on more on that in a bit. So this is honestly one of the for this version, this was one of the biggest things I found that slowed down my thought process when learning to play them. Because essentially whenever you're hiring, you have to say, okay, not only do I want this model for this model's sake, but I want it to stay within 10 inches of Sandeep so he can borrow the action. What actions are worth this? What, like, Gammon summoning do I think the actions are worth? What I ended up doing was actually, like, just making a tarot-sized card that has a list of actions based on what elementals are on the table, and just ended up putting the ones that I wanted to use more at the top. Highly recommend this. So one of the reasons Essence of Power goes with him is it immediately gives him two more options. One is a 6-inch single ping, which can chain another 6 inches to another enemy model, and it heals the attacker 4 damage done. So you can have Sandeep go ping ping, heal 2, which is nice. And the other one is a 12-inch range quote-unquote toss that moves up to 5 inches, which I found useful, but because of the way you're drawing the line for away, etc., at the further at range you are, the smaller the triangle you can shove someone on that area is, so it gets a little awkward. You have to really plan ahead for it.
Yeah, I find I really don't use that much past turn 1. It's nice for the unpack, and then you're probably doing something else with him.
Yeah. Next one is Kandara. She gives you a bunch of different options here. With her, you can actually get a melee. It's not spectacular, but it has a raise 3 on it, which is pretty dope. It also gives him the Gammon summon he already has, but hers has a trigger on it that says, hey, spend a stone to summon more Gammon based on raises. So if you want to borrow hers for that, you can. And then you have a range that does more damage if the enemy is engaged with elementals. So, hey, I just summoned a bunch of gammon, do more damage from you from range. And then the 4 Winds Golem is the other, really the winner here. You have another 3 actions here. We have Up We Go, which everybody loves a good Up We Go. You have an 8-inch move target 6 inches. This is what you end up using more than the Essence of Power's weird toss thingy. And a base 3 gun that pings enemies within Pulse 2, which is great.
It's just a really good gun.
Yes. Which is, for me, weird to say in Arcanist. I just don't think of guns when I think Arcanist. I know there are guns in there, it's just not a defining characteristic for us. And spoiler alert, 2 of the models I basically take in both versions are Kandara and the Golem. So that's one of the reasons that kind of core feels the same.
Wind Golem.
The Wind Golem, sorry. Tornado Boy. I'm going to go through the other Golems and Gammons real quick, because the further down this list you get, the more niche they are. Your Ice and Fire Golem both give you a melee. The Ice Golem's cool. Both of these are base 3. The Ice Golem's cool because it's a 3-inch melee that can remove a friendly token from the target to add an extra damage. The Fire Golem, it's only 2 and it gives out burning. 2 inches, not this base 3. The Fire Gammon has an 8-inch sparkle. It only does 1 damage. It splashes burning. The issue I will say on the Fire and Ice Gammon is when Sandeep borrows an action, he uses its stat. The Gammon are cheap. Their stats are 4s.
You probably don't want your master borrowing a 3-stone attack.
Exactly.
It's just, you got to be in a really weird situation for that to make sense.
Yes. The one thing I want to call out on the Ice Gammon, its melee does get a positive if the target is slow, but it only does 1 damage base anyway. Its 8-inch sparkle does 2 damage, and if you get a raise, it moves the target 2 inches. That said, there's a bajillion other ways to move targets in this keyword, so no, not really. Now, your Wind Gammon, on the other hand, they have a stat 4 damage 1 melee. It does have raise 3, but again, stat 4 unlikely. More importantly, you have an 8-inch sparkle that moves the target 4 inches, and that does include friendlies. This is probably this is the option for Gammon that you use if you don't have
This is the same one the Wind Golem has, it's just 1 worse stat. But if your Wind Golem is dead or far away,
exactly. Also, I thought the Wind Golem moved you 6 inches, and this moves you 4.
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, no, maybe you're right.
I am. Yay.
Oh, never mind. Yep, ignore me. I've been doing that wrong.
Jeez, Cole. So yeah, there's a bunch of options, but realistically, you're pulling from 3, maybe 4 of those 8 model options. Further notes on this is some Essence isn't bad. Kandara and Wind Golem seem great. Other golems are good essentially to give Sandeep an option to charge, because efficient movement is good. Gammons generally no. Otherwise, this Sandeep moves his allies 5 inches. He has a couple different ways to do this. Or this is his other way to attach his upgrades. And he can then specifically move summoned allies, aka Gammon, 6 inches and make them take an action. And then with a stone, you can make them take that action to ignore their summon token. So, again, this is where I kind of start saying, okay, this is the more schemey, potentially Sandeep, and we'll see that a little bit more in his upgrades he hands out. And again, initial note here was, ultimately, I think you will shift him doing friendly movement for an unpack early, or just kind of moving people around mid-game so that they will be in position to score, to then you will have him be a mini golem when needed. The Essence, one cool thing about it is it makes enemy models within 6 discard a card to cheat versus elementals. Notably, this is not including Sandeep. He is not an elemental.
Not anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, not anymore. Yep. But that is in all duels, so if you're attacking or defending against an elemental, that can get pretty spicy.
Yep. Yeah, so that you can get it up there. You're not going to roll over it in like an attack or two, but you have to remember that
It'll go
gives
down.
itself a bit of defense, and not be too worried about it being up there. That said, one of its other things is in still form. So for a 6, and soul stones equal to 4 minus the turn number, the essence can replace into a golem and heal 2. So the later in the game you go, and notice this is a replace, not a summon, so it will actually still be able to interact and everything as far as counting for strats. So I was looking at that going, okay, this is a kind of keep it back, turn 1 and 2, maybe 3 you go, oh, my wind golem died. Hey, look, another one.
He's a good insurance policy.
Yes. And this is where I kind of got into, okay, we now have 2 ways, really 3 ways, because we didn't get to Sandeep's demise yet, of making a golem mid-game. And you're pretty much never going to use all of them. You have a bunch of ways to do it, but you're almost never going to use all of them, and part of that is because there's better things to do than bring in most of the golems. But yeah, the other trick is if Sandeep dies, he summons a golem within base with 5 health. So he just kind of poofs into a golem. It's another good insurance policy. You don't feel too bad if Sandeep dies after, like, late turn 2 or early turn 3. Also, he's generally not in the thick of it, so I haven't really...
Damn.
Yeah,
Sorry, I wouldn't expect that on a full 14 health master.
Yeah, no, it's... Well, he also has Aegis, so he's got some defenses and things.
Yeah,
His
Aegis
stats
with-
kind of suck,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
5s on defense and willpower, but it made for an interesting time of kind of stress testing where he can be on the table. But yeah, no, for this version, I kind of said, bring a lot of stones. I think he's going to be the more wiggly playstyle, and you're going to use Gammon as speed bumps / spare golems. I think this is definitely the higher skill floor version because you kind of have to think 3D chess-ish to kind of decide what part of your toolbox you're using and adapt as necessary.
Sandeep having,
Yeah.
Effectively 3 cards worth of back of card actions to take. Sometimes too many options can convince you to make a bad one.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But having lots of options does make for cool playstyles where you feel like you always have an answer to what's going on.
Yeah. And I've kind of used this terminology in other crews over the years as well, but the more you play this version, the more you kind of develop your preferred processes. I kind of think of them as you've developed a macro in your head of like, okay, really this takes 2 or 3 actions to do, but if I think about it as one process, it removes a lot of that analysis paralysis and a lot of that, well, let me think through this process to make sure it is the thing I want to do. But it takes practice to get there. All right, on to other Sandeep, back to Quiet Flame, and reading through this one again. This was the one that just the crew card made me excited to play this crew. So Sandeep, or Swole Deep, as some people are calling him, and yeah, dude's been going to the gym. He's hanging out with Banasuva again. And my first glance at this, they are a melee duo, kind of between the two of them. And I think what they really want is for Sandeep to be stuck in with numerous enemies to make the most of his different ways of causing a lot of duels, as kind of area control via hand pressure. And so that's where he wants to be. And really what he wants is a couple of friends, hopefully including himself, in a bubble of enemies, so he can pop his Arcane Storm onto multiple spots, so he can just cause a lot of duels and either eat a lot of your opponent's cards or cause a lot of damage kind of spread around. Now, he and Banasuva can also do direct brawling too, but really what I think they're there for is that AoE control and indirect damage, which Banasuva still does a little bit in melee, because whenever he hits somebody, he also does that same damage to someone else in his melee range, because he's got so many arms. He's a good general. He has many armies.
Yup.
That wasn't even a school joke. There's also good displacement between Toss and the Mantra of Rebuke from the crew card, so a lot of different offensive movement tricks there as well. Definitely the more straightforward of the two versions. And for me personally, this title definitely joined my kind of bench in the faction, just because he's tanky and damagey in ways that other folks aren't. Like, Tony, I think, is still definitely the better brawler, but she doesn't... This Sandeep can hit your health. What he really does is he punches your hand until you don't know what cards are anymore.
Well, and this version of Sandeep has so much movement, both moving my crew and moving yours, that like I think he's hands down our best Informance Master.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to where pregame, when my opponent asks, what do you have that can move my friends around? I said, it's faster to list the ones that can't. Just assume everyone can. Everyone either moves a friend or an enemy or both in the list that I build for Informants.
Yep. And really, basically anybody can, because you have your mantras on the crew card.
Right.
Also, this Sandeep is speed 7. He wants to get into the fight real fast. So those are our two titles. So you can shorthand them into weird summony movement kind of schemey Sandeep and melee pulse Sandeep. I think both of them go a good bit deeper than that, but that's a decent shorthand. Thoughts, questions, etc. before I jump to our uniques for my initial takes there.
Did any of your opinions greatly change from start to finish? So I'm assuming this is all your realizations at the end of the 10 games. What you came to the conclusion of, but what ended up not being what you thought?
So a lot of what ended up not being what I thought was noticing little tricks and ways things interacted. Like Cole mentioned, a lot of the time the Gammons, you're turning them into Golem, that's great. Really, you're doing it at least as much for causing the demises where you want them and when you want them, and then the Golem's kind of a yay. Little things like that. There were a couple things of... I think a good way to put it is I got the general idea of what the models do correct in my initial takes that I'm going for here, and I am kind of free-forming it and saying, oh, I found out this later as I come across it, but I got what they do correct, but then as I played more games, you find the depth, you find those macros, you find this is an interesting interaction that does this, etc. So yeah, kind of what I'm doing here is here's the baseline, and we'll add this is the stuff I learned as the games went on.
Yeah. One thing I think is interesting, based on this is not the first time Roman and I have discussed Sandeep for an amount of time. He gets a ton of work out of Arcane Storm, and I might take that 0 times in an average game. I am all about his Gata just whacking people and being generally a nuisance in melee. I always think, Arcane Storm's great, and then my opponent just never gives me a big enough bubble to be worth a master action on. So I think there are even different ways to play the more straightforward BD version, just based on our experiences being so different.
I've been on the receiving end of that, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Well, you play Tony, so that makes sense.
No, this was Bass.
Okay. Bass also tends to bubble a little bit, or can if you're not careful, right? It's one on paper. I understand that can be devastating. It
was.
I don't know how many games I have with Quiet Flame, and I've just never seen the opportunity to, or I'm so used to ignoring it that I forget he has it, and I miss the opportunity, is more likely what's happening.
Yeah. I kind of developed a thought process of when to hit face versus when to Arcane Storm as we went on by the 5th game, so that'll be in my 5th game notes. But yeah, I do really love the fact that even though this is the quote-unquote more straight version of Sandeep, again, clearly there are multiple different choose-your-own-adventure paths on how to play him, which I dig. And I think they did a good job giving him that versatility without making him... As in,
it doesn't make him just better.
Yeah.
The way it did in previous editions, maybe.
Yeah.
He's not just better.
Yeah, but also...
He just has a lot of different ways to do the same kind of thing.
Yes, but also they made him good and flexible without you feeling like you need a second brain squished in your head to figure out what you want to do. The other Sandeep still has a little bit of that, but it's nowhere near what he was in 3rd edition. I believe you said at one point in 3rd edition, you really like him, but playing one game with him well leaves your brain about as mushy as if you just played a 3-round tournament.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I just did it.
Yeah.
Even though Font of Magic was great in 3rd, I wasn't comfortable bringing him in a tournament just because of the brain drain and the time it took me to play him well. And the time it takes to explain to your opponent what the hell is even happening.
Yeah.
That's been toned down a lot. There's still a little bit of it. He's still, built on the same bones, but there's less of their eyes just glazing over as you're doing 9 things with models that haven't activated yet.
Yeah, it hit the nail on the head, and like I said, it still takes a little practice for that, but you don't need a...
Font especially.
Yeah. You don't need a PhD in wargaming to make it work. All right. Quickly moving on to our initial takes on the unique models. Kudra, who is a meat person and not an elemental. Also, my vote for biggest glow up in art/model and honestly in card for this edition. She's basically pure melee, but she is so good at it. Stat 7 attack, it's only base 2, but it gives poison, and she gets 2 swings per charge, and also she's not limited to one charge per activation, and she can charge while engaged. Like, you move her up so she can charge into something, and then charge into something, and punch 4 times. Ideally, she wants to charge into, 2 different spots of 2 people, so that she's not just going, well, I hit you and give you poison. And then I hit you again and can't give you poison again because you're already poisoned. That's the one trick that I found difficult about using her. But otherwise, she's defense 6 on everything. She's got butterfly jump. And she has
Squirrely.
What was that?
That she's very squirrely.
Yes, she's absolutely squirrely. And she's got disillusion for some enemy movement, or offensive movement, rather. And her one tactical is also her signature, and that is from 1 all. It's a 6-inch, needs a 5, it's once per activation, and she heals 1 for each friendly elemental model within range to a maximum of 3. And then for a stone, allies within pulse 6 of her heal X, where X is equal to the amount this model healed from this action. Not would have healed. I goofed on this probably the first 3 games I played with her, because she actually has to be damaged in order to heal for that stone to be worth it. So, there's a...
To the point, I almost wonder if it's worth, throwing her off a couple buildings early game, just to make sure she has wounds on her. Because that can be a nuclear heal on your entire crew. But if your opponent's smart, they'll just never hit her, and she can't do that then.
Yeah. It takes a little setup because you want your elementals within 6 of her. You already want 1 of them there anyway for the crew card. Well, with Quiet Frame Sandeep, you want them there anyway so she can get the extra insight defensive trigger. But if you get kind of 3 of them around her, suddenly all of them heal 3 because they're within 6 of her, while she heals 3, or they heal whatever she heals. So when I've had that go off, it is ridiculous. It's one of the best uses of a stone I think I've seen in the game, balanced by the fact that there are so many hoops to jump
really
through.
Hard to set up.
Yeah.
That's one case where I kind of prefer her in Quiet Flame because she has 3 other signatures.
Yep.
This one very rarely actually is useful.
Yes.
Other than, fishing for the revelation trigger to get an insight, which can be good, but giving her other signatures for the rest of the situations is nice.
That is almost exactly my initial note on her, of like, bring her with Quiet Flame for more tactical options, or more signature options, rather. Kandara, our first unique elemental. She was an interesting one, because, like, she overall has just a lot of good tools to use. She was almost never in my games she never took the spotlight, but she was always just this really solid piece that even just her standing there again in like Quiet Flame, hey, she's an elemental that gives you that bonus, and she's not going to immediately die. Also, with Serene Countenance, it keeps people from being able to cheat against her when attacking her. And while... Let me just cover this. Her other ability on the front of her card, Strength from the Elements. This is one of those that reads weirder than it actually works. Essentially, she must have already activated. The last enemy model has to have activated, and you need a friendly elemental within 6 of her. When you would next say, I want to activate something, she can say, well, I've already activated, you're out of people, I'm going to kill this other elemental next to me, and then I get to activate a second time with slow. So 1 action and a signature. That takes up, like, a quarter of the front of her card. And it was one of those of, I didn't use it a ton, but when I did, it usually shifted the game a point or two in my direction. So yeah, my note on this, reading her initially, was this is a great anti- and or scoring option if you can set up for it. Otherwise, on the back of her card, she's got a decent melee and gun, as we kind of covered with Font Sandeep for borrowing her stuff because she is an elemental. And she can summon Gammon on an attack, and her regular signature is give out a insight token to a target within 10, which can be herself. So yeah, she was probably my second hire every game after the Wind Golem, or the 4 Winds Golem rather, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about.
I think on Kandara, if there weren't like other lore and mechanic reasons for her to not be a totem, she really does feel like a totem to me for both versions of Sandeep.
Yeah. Because
what she's doing is so like integral to how that crew functions, at least the way I understand them.
Yeah.
I think there is essentially no reason you shouldn't hire her with both versions every time.
Yeah. I think the one time I didn't, just to try it, was for something weird. The main thing I found was I missed the potential ability to summon Gammon with her.
Yeah.
And the insight setup, but there's other people that can do that for you.
Right. And the strength from the elements, like we talked earlier, it's easy to look at, I have to kill a Gammon as a cost, but sometimes that's a benefit. It's, how do I kill my Gammon? I'm looking for a way to sacrifice them. So if she kills a Wind Gammon, sure, she only gets an action and a signature, but when she does that, she gets a 4-inch place, so she really got to walk. Like it can be basically a full second activation for a model you wanted to kill anyway.
Yep. And especially if she's summoning a Wind Gammon, its one slow action is going to be, let me move someone. So you can kind of set her or someone else up, set them up in a place where they're going to be a nuisance, so they need to kill them, and then you get free movement out of it. Or if they don't kill them, she gets free movement out of it and does stuff. That was literally, that interaction was one of the things that made me go, oh, the Gammon I really kind of care about more for their demise about half the time.
Yep, especially the Wind Gammon.
Yeah, absolutely. 4 Winds Golem. This is the first hire of the crew is either this or Kandara, and I think they're neck and neck. He's another elemental. He is another speed 7. He's got flight. He's got butterfly jump. he's got an amazing demise. If he dies, you either summon 2 Windgammon in base contact or make 2 scheme markers into base contact with him. I remember reading this and going, okay, that has some immediate scoring potential or just fuckery potential. And oh boy, does it. I think every game... He was another one I liked to kind of stress test. How annoying can I make him by throwing him in my opponent's face, forcing them to kill him, and then go, fuck, why did I do that? I just gave you 2 more points.
Especially if you're playing the version of Sandeep, where you might have 2 or 3 more wind golems this game.
Yep. Yeah, as we kind of already covered, he's got great actions. Up We Go has tons of movement, shenanigans for offensive stuff. It's got good triggers on it to kind of do more ping damage and extra movement for an extra attack. He's got a ranged attack that can target friendlies to move the target up to 6. He's got a base 3 gun that pulses a damage out pulse 2, which is great. He's got a leap on a 5. And he's got the same thing that all the golems do that I don't really understand why they do, of spend a stone, do damage to him, and summon a Windgammon. Like, okay. Spoiler alert, throughout these 10 or 11 games, I did not do that at all. I never felt like it was worth the stones, the wounds, or etc. I think the closest I got was with him, just because I was like, I kind of really want him to die to drop those 2 scheme markers, but I don't think this opponent's going to do it while he's at the damage he's at. But I ended up not doing it even then because I had other spots I wanted to spend the stones. So yeah, he's just really good, and I have a few notes that basically everything I just said. Other golems... Ice Golem's your tanky boy. He's hard to move. With some setup, he hits harder. He's another source of pulsing out TNs, but this one gives slow. Your Fire Golem does burning at pulse 3. Decent melee, hands out burning. Another pulse of things are gain 2 damage, and you guessed it, burning. Fire Golem's definitely the weakest of the 3, in my opinion. Back to our non-elemental folks. Arun. He's our melee tank. He is also with the Union. He's fun because you get to have him punch whatever the weakest stat is. And he can either do 3 damage or have fun triggers. He gives another friend extra actions and can heal 2 on a trigger. That isn't controlling the action, so you can tell your master, hey, take an extra action out of activation, which I think is the reason you bring him about 80% of the time in my experience. And he gives a free prepare to an ally with some fun utility triggers. He was one, Cole, you and I talked about as we went, and I like him better in Tony, having played him in both now. I definitely see when you use him with Sandeep, but just the style I had with him, I usually was looking at him going, I wish I would have brought someone else.
Yeah, I think my opinion on him has softened from when we had your sort of pre-10 games conversation. I still think he's really good. I still think he's an acceptable way to spend 8 stones.
Yeah.
And he'll always have something to do, but I do think now that I've just played a lot more Sandeep since then, I mean, that was months and months ago, I still really like him in Fountain of Magic, but I've been finding other uses for those stones in Quiet Flame.
Well, and I see where you're coming from there. I think it's really funny that we bring the guy that probably doubles the crew's stone hungriness himself more in the title that uses more stones.
Yeah. No, that is an unfortunate part about it. You just kind of deal with it, to be honest.
It fits in with the idea of there's a lot of pockets in this utility belt. Which pockets am I using this game?
Right. But Arun's ability to, you're talking about like macros and sequences. One of those is making Sandeep and Kandara each take another summon action, which can, almost double your Gammon output for a turn. Or you're doing the fun thing that I like to do with Font now is make Sandeep have a min 4 gun that you're using 4 times a turn now with a rune.
Yeah. Turret Sandeep. Yeah.
Yes. And a rune can hit pretty hard if you're targeting speed on someone who you've killed an Ice Gammon next to.
Yeah.
Now they've got staggered. So you're up a stat or 2 on anything.
Again, he's a very good toolbox. If you're looking at him to be a melee beat stick, he can. It just takes some setup. But in general, I have found him... I have found a style of using him I like better in Tony. Not to say he's bad here, just he speaks to me more in Tony. Yeah.
Sure.
Any thoughts, questions, etc. before we jump to the minions and run through them real fast?
I still find it weird and hilarious that it's called Insight Fighting because that's what it was in 3rd edition, but it does not limit to any kind of attack action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if anything.
I feel like they should have renamed that.
Probably.
Not complaining.
Yeah.
But
it's flavorful, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. As far as...
There's also this is also the reason I wish they didn't word the additional actions rule the way they did. Because it'd be real fun if I could do Insight Fighting on it, no kidding. But
yeah.
Yeah, I've tried to do that and then realized after the game that totally wasn't legal.
Yeah,
no,
like
no
it'd
good.
be an easy fix if it's just the same model generating additional actions.
Sure.
Because this would have the. I'm being selfish at this point, anyways. But yeah, I know, and I fully agree. He's a good. He wants to facilitate more of what Tony wants to do than facilitates more of what Sandeep wants to do. By a little bit, but I think that's enough to push him over the line of more frequently taking an MNSU than academic.
Yeah, I think if, like Rome said, if you're trying to do turret Sandeep, which I've only done a couple of games now, but man, is it sure effective. I think he's a critical part. If you're not going all in on that, you can probably find another way to spend those stones.
Yeah. All right. Speedrunning the minions so we can get to the actual, developing thoughts on this. First off, we'll just go down these by cost. Shastar Video Guard. My first note on this.
Fuck these guys.
Yeah. Seems remarkably self-sufficient, and holy crap, that opinion did not change.
That's a really good way to describe them. They don't need a damn thing from anyone else.
They're like, the rest of the crew, go play whatever game you're going to play. I got this flank. Leave me alone. Because they auto-gain an
which I think the crew needs, by the way. That's a really important role for them to have, because they're, beyond this model, very, interlocking PC.
Yes, absolutely.
And he just isn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say this crew bubbles, but this crew needs to have the right... Yeah, they need to have the right cogs on the right spot in the board to interact, not the action, but mechanically, with one another's stuff. And the Shastars can be like, I can jump in as a cog where you need me, or I can just go be my own fucking entire machine on my own. Which, I mean, I think they're well costed for that role. And yeah, the crew, if you take them out of this keyword, the crew, I think, just doesn't do any kind of play.
They kind of lose the ability to work on the edges of the board.
Yeah.
Without these guys.
Yeah, they auto-gain insight on their activation. They can use it after cheating Fate in an opposed duel, so they can use this defensively to draw a card. More on that in a minute as far as things I figured out as we went on this. They're hella mobile. They have Onward, which, hey, you can go, I don't have a 7 in hand. Let me insight this. Oh, that's not a 7. Let me toss it away. Oh, look, that is. Oh, it's a crow? I get that insight back. So they can move 18 inches in a turn if you don't need them to do anything else. They're hard to kill, so they're nice and tanky despite having defense 5. And yeah, I essentially said these are your bread and butter minion, I'm probably bringing 2, and I think in most games I did. There are definitely some I didn't, just to try other things, but they got solid melee, they got a solid gun, they got fun triggers all over the place. They're just cool.
Yeah, and in Quiet Flame, I don't think you can overstate how good a free mantra every turn with them is. And if you want, you can concentrate and get a second one. Like, getting 2 mantra of rebukes on a clump of models that are trying to stand next to an informants marker, that is an outsized impact on the game from a 7-stone model. And
one of the things I kind of put together playing more games with these, consciously realized, I should say, is that sort of thing. A lot of what matters in this crew is when you're doing stuff to your opponent that says, I'm doing this because I want to get rid of your cards, versus I'm doing this because I want the other end result it gets me. And when you activate what model in the crew matters for that. Your Ox-40 and Mages, a little bit cheaper. Initial note on them was they're your backline or midline support shooter. They have the same signature as Kandara to hand out an insight token at range. They have a trigger on that to potentially move people to place them on top of a piece of terrain, which they can build in if they themselves have insight. They also have flight, which is just makes them potentially good schemers. They're not specifically fast, but flight always helps with that. But yeah, they really, you kind of want an insight on them so they just always can build in a tome when they need it. Yeah, once per activation on that, but yeah, they're another, yeah.
They're not fancy, but having a cheap model to give out insight that isn't Kandara who wants to do other things lets the rest of the crew shine.
And also on top of that, having a ranged attack, even though it's Sparkle, so you're not getting raises on it, but having a ranged attack when the rest of the crew, again, kind of wants to be closer in working with one another, having them be able to kind of be off to one side or more in the back and go, I can still affect the game. Very helpful.
And if you're in Font, suddenly they're also Min 3 and Golem Summoners. It's like in both versions, they're just good cheap bodies.
Okay, our last living minion is our Elemental Boxer, the other thing shared with MNSU. Same cost as the Oxford Mage. They are our solid defense-offense minion. They can also punch the target's weakest stat. They can get 3 hits with that because it is a signature. They have a melee-based chain gang, so you can do that on a charge. Again, not flashy, but solid. I ended up taking them less often than the mages. I don't think that's a ding against them. I think that's more just the games I was playing them in. Because I did kind of feel it was a case of, all right, you brought your 1 or 2 Shastars, you brought your elementals that are making things work, you brought your other support pieces. Do you want an Oxford or do you want a Boxer? Was kind of how that ended up working for me.
Yeah, I never have room for both, and I basically always pick the mage.
I forced myself to bring a Boxer at least once just to see how they work. They weren't bad. Again, I think MNSU appreciates them a little more just because of that punch chain gang. That little extra movement is helpful. The academic crew has so many friendly and enemy movement options that it's like, oh, another one. I mean, that's cool, but yeah,
but I really didn't need it.
Yeah, the weird problem with that is that they appear to be have a more specific role in Tony 2 in the Union President, but not getting the positive flips on your sparring partner is very obviously missing from that. Because it's just more melee beating in Troubleshooter, which you really don't need 90% of the time. Yeah, and you want more mobility with Tony too. But again, you'd be surprised how often you don't get that damn 5 you need to push yourself.
On the other hand,
the friendly model.
On the other hand, we've had one punch wizard, yes.
I finally talk
what
about him
about
in a
second punch wizard? Yeah, no, again, I don't think they're bad. They're just the more niche living minion option here.
I think my problem is they don't interlock with the rest of the crew. They're doing more things that the crew already does, and often worse. And they're not like a Shastar that can just go off and do stuff by itself. So they need support from the crew, but aren't supporting the crew the way the mage does.
The time I remember bringing one that I was like, this was the correct choice, was when I didn't need a mage backing up anybody in the back, and I knew this was going to be more of a pile in, like, game of millimeters movement around kind of thing. So having their chain gang punch and also having more melee in your face was just helpful. But again, that's... If you are saying, hey, I only want to play Sandeep and I want to be able to bring him into everything, yeah, you're going to find uses for these. If you're going, I play the whole faction, and you're going to bring Sandeep into specific things, this is the minion you can kind of live without.
It appears very obviously to me that the point of them in Sandeep was supposed to be a mini brawl tank in case where you really want to fight, because defense 6 ununionized, which you can probably get possibly even more in academic than you can in MNSU, is just going to take forever to remove them against traditional fighting.
Yeah, they're going to be a good little speed bump. And again, the same trick with a rune where you give someone staggered from a ice gammon. I mean, suddenly they're skill 7 against speed, like, and doing it 3 times with triggers on every suit, like, they can do some stuff. It's just, is that stuff useful?
The time I found them most useful was when I wanted another Shastar, but didn't want to give up the stone, and I specifically wanted the Shastar to be, like, in the middle to use the signature mantras. So these guys didn't start with the extra insight, but they were a really hard to remove piece that could use the mantras on the crew card for Quiet Flame. All right. All we have left are the Gammon. We've kind of already talked about them, talking about Sandeep's use of their actions. Wind Gammon, they're your cheap, fast flight folks. No leap, which I keep, like, even at the end of my 11 games here, I was like, oh shit, yeah, this isn't 3rd ed anymore. They don't have a leap. But they are...
No, they're half the cost they used to be.
Turns out, when you're a 3 cost model, you don't get a leap, and that's entirely reasonable. They are the absolute best gammon to hire. You're going to hire them as your cheap scheme runner. They'll move your friends and enemies with their attack, and they'll move a friend with their demise. Fire Gammon, they're cheap, they hand out burning, they have weak range. Their demise is, I give burning. The thing I found useful for the Fire Gammon was if they're nearby Banasuva when they activate, they give him burning and he heals off of it. That was the main thing I found them useful for. And then Ice Gammon again, cheap, they ping enemies when they leave engagement, and their demise hands out staggered, like we've mentioned a couple times. So it's kind of... They're not peons, but you're kind of using them like peons in that they are more of a movable resource than a model in many cases.
Importantly, though, they aren't peons, so like that's why I don't bring Sandeep in Recover, because I just rely too much on having these guys, and playing the minigame of I need to kill them before you can isn't super fun for me. But it means, if you're doing public demo or something, you do a lot of options for it.
This is the part where I'm going to jump back to where I said, hey, we're going to cover those elemental bind upgrades that Summoning Sandeep hands out.
Oh yeah, you got upgrades.
So when Font of Magic summons things, he has the ability to attach an elemental binds. There's one for each element. You have wind, ice, and fire. Essentially, all of these do like one good thing and one bad thing. And you can, at the start of the model that they're attached to's activation, get rid of it if you want. So your Elemental Bind of Air essentially says, hey, once per activation, when you end a walk action, you drop a scheme. So turns out, if you just attach that to a summoned Windgammon, even though it's summoned, it's still scheming for you. So yeah, that's pretty good. Your ice, with more ice on it, is a good option to give a bad choice lockdown to your enemies or your opponents, because they have the choice of, well, you have hazardous and the, like, I engage you that Ice Gammon, or I ping you when you leave engagement that Ice Gammon already have. They don't move. The wind says you do less damage. Heat, I don't think I ever put that on anything. It says you do 1 extra damage, but you don't get triggers.
So this is the one that unlocks that Sandeep turret I was talking about before.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you do is you put this on the Wind Golem. Now his gun is min 4, and Sandeep copies that gun, which copies the damage increase as far as anyone
Got it. That makes sense.
I've talked to can tell. So you get 2 of those from the Wind Golem, 3 of them from Sandeep. A rune goes and makes each of them do it 1 more time. And the fun part is Sandeep can still declare triggers on it, because the Wind Golem can't declare triggers and can't charge, but Sandeep doesn't say anything about that. He just copies the attack.
That sounds like an oversight.
It sure might be, but it is how it works.
That is something that I had not put together. So this is why we pay Cole the big bucks, everybody. And by big bucks, I mean I feed him smoked meat when he comes in town for Gen Con.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, it turns out 7 min 4 guns, turn 1, cuts through just about anything you're going to throw it at.
Especially when they pulse ping off of that.
Yes. Yeah, area damage baked in. Yep. No, it's pretty spicy.
I don't want to play against that.
No, you don't. It's bad. The rest of the upgrades though do have some other cool, like this is where I think the skill ceiling is in the crew, is using these effectively. To be honest, you can just completely not use them and you'll probably be fine. But you know, fancy things like visions and ice giving you speed 0 sounds terrible until you have a crew that wants to lure you across the board. You just say, well, you move me my speed is 0. Eat it.
Especially on something like the Ice Golem is less of a thing because it already says I move half, but I've had people really try to be like, I need to get you away from the scheme marker so I can actually kill you. And I'm like, no. I am literally a mountain of ice. Deal. Yep.
Yeah, and usually these upgrades will be going on Gammon when you're summoning them, but importantly, the Spark of Insight signature, you can attach it to anyone, even non-elementals, which sounds wrong at first, but totally works.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a trick that I was like, oh, that's interesting that we can do that. All right, one last thing on models, very, very quick. Versatile's worth mentioning. Basically, no, because there's enough of the stuff in here that says academic that no, you don't need it. Maybe the emissary, but the problem there is if you're bringing it with Font Sandeep, he's an academic, but he's not an elemental, so you can't borrow his attacks. And quite frankly, I don't think Quiet Flame needs help on face beating. The one thing I mentioned was Vogel's worth mentioning, but I find Vogel is basically always worth mentioning, especially in Boundary Dispute. He's just another good kind of self-supporting toolbox that can do whatever you need him to do.
I think you should always be aware of, should I bring Altus even though he's bad because I need token removal. Some matchups you have to eat that 7 stones. You don't have a choice. Because there is no token removal anywhere in the keyword. And then the other one that I've thought about but have never done is bring Harrison to remove Kandara's slow. when she sets up her second activation. That doesn't really feel worth it to me, but he does also bring healing, which outside of Kudra's too hard to set up thing, the crew really doesn't have much healing either. So he's one that I've been looking at, but I've never found the occasion to actually bring.
How is he removing that slow? Because she gains it whenever she activates.
She makes the decision to kill a model and gain slow when the last enemy activates. So then, so when after an enemy model ends activation, if all enemy models have activated, at that point she kills a gammon and gains slow and may activate a second time. So as long as you go with Harrison after your enemy's last model, which is tough. That's why I haven't bothered. But you generally have so many activations with Gammon that's not as hard as it sounds. And more specifically,
you just pointed out something I still hadn't realized. When she makes that decision, she doesn't have to activate right then. She activates later. And I think the reason I hadn't realized that is because so many of the games I was playing, the numbers were very even a lot of the times.
Yeah. No, you make the decision and kill the model after they're done with all their models, but she may not activate for another couple activations.
Again, big bucks.
I've played a lot of Sandeep.
All right. Good notes there. So yeah, that was all my initial takes, plus a little bit sprinkled here and there of other things we learned. But now we're jumping into my notes for the 5 games in thoughts of note at this point. These 5 games are 4 games of Quiet Flame and 1 of Font of Magic, and I'd had no games with a rune or the Boxers yet. Quiet Flame, my note here is spectacular at making a 5.5-inch diameter bubble a black hole for your opponent's cards or wounds. This plus crew support means he's good at holding points and a straightforward offense. Not many ways to move enemies, wind elementals, also friends, and the mantra, but what's there is good for everything the crew wants to do anyway. Big thing A, you want to make sure you're keeping your elementals within 6 inches of friends you expect to be attacked to gain insight. This isn't hard, you just have to learn to check to make sure you're moving in that situation or planning to be able to be there. And big thing B, I honestly think this is the... hard isn't the right word, but it's the thing to be aware of when you're playing Quiet Flame Sandeep's crew, just to make sure you're keeping this as an option. Use Insight defensively. Because whenever you're having your elementals nearby, if you take damage, once per activation, you get an Insight. So if you have an attack coming in, and you haven't gained your free Insight yet, and you have an elemental next to you, you might as well use your Insight, look at the next card and go, okay, I maybe want that, I maybe don't. If you don't, toss it and flip the next one. Worst case scenario, well, both cases are not horrible. One, you either don't take damage, now you don't have an Insight, which means they might attack you again, in which case, if you get hit, you get an Insight, because you haven't used that ability yet, if your elemental is next to you. Or, they do hit you, and then you get the Insight right back. So it's just something you need to learn as kind of a reflex, when to do it versus not. The main time I thought to not do it is essentially if that model hasn't gone yet, you absolutely need them to have an Insight so they get whatever mantra signature they want, and you don't want to take an action to prepare to gain one. If they already have one, you just keep it on you, because if they swing at you a couple times and fail to hit you, you don't get the free Insight. Yeah. So that's the big thing you need to be aware of there. The other thing, 5 games in here, was you really need to know who to get Insight on before they go, especially turn 1, and the short list here is Banasuva and Kudra. That's because both of their signatures that they have on their card are not bad, but you're not going to use them turn 1. Whereas if they have an Insight, they can do Mantra of Travel, or either the other 2 mantras if you need it, but generally it's going to be Mantra Travel, so they get a free 4-inch move, which helps them get up into melee, which is where they want to be. If you don't need all the killing power, you can drop Kudra fairly easily. You could also drop Kandara, but honestly, as I went on, it was like, I'm more likely to drop Kudra than Kandara in most cases. Unless you need them turn 1 for scoring, your Oxmage can generally be prepared so they have their tomes to build in the extra movement for friends when they hand out insight on their signature. It's not a large amount of movement. It's levitate is the trigger. It places the model that you're giving insight within 2 on top of terrain. So it's, maybe 3 inches, 4 inches, depending on your base size. The thing I want to call out there, it says on top of terrain. It says nothing about that terrain having a height. So if you have a forest or a fog bank, you can just place 2 inches and you're on top of that terrain.
Yeah, I for some reason was thinking it had to be height 2 for very many games before realizing that wasn't true. I don't know if an earlier version of it did, or, if I just completely made that up, but...
Mm-hmm. I know the reason I thought it had to be height 2 for my first 2 games with this is because their attack cares about your target being on height 2.
Yeah.
So I just said, top, height 2. Right. That just clearly goes to everything on the back of their card, which is not the case. And then my final note here was Shastars are indeed pretty independent, or rather, they can go wherever you need them to support the others. So yeah, not a ton of notes for my first 5 games that built on anything there, other than kind of the tricks we've talked about here and there as we went. And I will note that those first 5 games... the reason I only had 1 Font of Magic was because essentially I had a Quiet Flame, a Font of Magic, and then 3 games at a tournament. And I didn't feel comfortable at the tournament playing Font of Magic on a time yet. And yeah, no, it was a good tournament. I think we already had this covered in some episode many moons ago, but... had a good time at that tourney, lost round 3 to Pandora because I did not pay attention to where schemes could go when they dropped off Paranoia tokens. That said, Pandora really doesn't like Quiet Flame Sandeep because she likes to kind of be close, and he's like, oh good, so many target numbers for you. I think half of the games with Quiet Flame, turn 2 or so, I had my opponent go through their entire deck because of all the target numbers he makes.
Arcane Storm and Banasuva's Pulse. And
and the thing I also realized with Sandeep is you have to plan for one of his actions, basically every activation, to be a prepare, because that causes a target number 15 duel around him or take 2 damage. Now, even if they pass that, for most things that's a 9 or a 10.
You've still eaten some cards.
Yeah. Like the number of times that people would flip like a 13, I'd be like, well, that's something I don't have to defend against. And I think I said something similar on the Wong 1st and 10, because he was doing a lot of that too. Any of these target number things that might cause damage, if you take it later in the turn, you're hoping to do damage. If you take it earlier in the turn, you're not hoping to do damage. You're hoping to eat their cards, either out of their hand or the high cards that they're hoping for in the deck. So just keep that in mind. I found that really, more than anything else, determined when Sandeep went. Is he there to cause damage, or is he there to eat cards? The other thing with him, and I think this is kind of the probably the big difference between how Cole and I play him. I find, my kind of thought process I came up with him is, if he can get to somewhere where he is within 2 inches of at least 2 enemy models, preferably more, but if it's at least 2, you're causing a good amount of actions, or a good amount of target numbers. Unless one of those models is something you specifically need to target down, just cause all the target numbers. especially if one of those is like a toolbox model or a support model that the opponent needs. They're more likely to throw cards at them that they probably need elsewhere, but they want to keep that model alive. So it can help to kind of know a little bit about your opponent's crew, or at least like what models they prefer to keep living longer, so you can just early game drain their resources as much as possible. On the other hand, if you need something dead, melee it. Because A, that's hitting willpower, which is generally the lower stat, so you're going to be up on it 1 in a lot of cases. It's base 3, and because it's an opposed duel, you can force it through. Also raises. So it's, for Quiet Flame, that was really the question mark of when do you do one versus the other. Little asterisks there of, with Arcane Storm, do you have another model that is engaging multiple things? Because he can target himself with it, or you can go, oh, Banasuva's engaged with 2-3 people. I'll hit me once, and then him once, and da-da-da-da-da. So it's about setting up where you can cause those most target numbers.
Yep. I feel like also with Quiet Flame, like me personally, even if I'm, playing more the Roman style of things, planning on one melee so you can hit that stone trigger to draw 2 cards starting on mid turn 2 a lot of games is pretty good, because this title, unlike Fauna Magic, has almost no use for stones whatsoever.
Yep.
So just turning him into 2 cards a turn is great.
Yeah. That was actually a note I had on this one, because part of this was kind of figuring out how many stones I want to take with the crew. And the crew I kind of gravitated to with Quiet Flame is him, Banasuva, Kudra, Kandara, Wind Golem, 2 Shastars, an Oxmage, and a Windgammon. For those of you doing math at home, that is exactly 50 stones. So I had no stones to start with in this crew, and for most of the time, I was comfortable with that. Because generally speaking...
One of very few crews that I think you can comfortably do that.
Yeah. I think the most stones I built with this crew that I was not immediately like, why did I bring this many, was 1. And that was effectively... I think I dropped a Shastar for an Oxmage, a second Oxmage. Yeah, this is a crew that 0 to 1, perfectly fine. If you really need a stone, you can set it up to where Kandara will eat your Windgammon. Oh no, it moved people turn 1. That's actually how I played this crew into Recover Evidence. Because if you kill your own Gammon...
It was against me.
Yep.
I remember that game.
And actually, that was because we had that discussion. You're like, I don't think he's worth taking into Recover, because you generally bring a couple of Gammon to especially help that unpack. I'm like, bet, let's try this. I had to set it up to be like, Kandara's eating that Windgammon. You're not getting a chance to kill it. But it worked. But yeah, no, especially this crew into Informants, it's devastating. Like, I don't normally win games by large differentials. This crew into Informants, I think every game I played into it, I won by at least 5 or 6 points.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Unless you're playing something that is equally fine-tuned for Informants, which there's a couple things in the game for sure, but against a normal crew, you should shut them out of the strat every time. Unless you're just getting blown apart.
Yeah. Or, they're playing something especially savage.
Yeah, even Savage, I've got a great win rate, because it doesn't matter if they count for 2 if they can't stay next to the marker.
Yep. And that was one reason I was so excited for this title especially, is the crews I have at the front of my bench. Informants is my weakest strategy in a lot of cases, just because it usually requires, I need something that tanks. No. I play like dancing showgirls.
Yeah.
Turns out your elemental beatstick man and his angry demon spirit are tanky sons of bitches. Doug, do you have any thoughts on first 5 games you wanted to throw in there before I move on to my 10-game thoughts?
Nope.
Cool. So, because I had those first 5 games really focused on Quiet Flame, the latter 5, really 6 because this was 11, I really tried to focus on Font of Magic. And my biggest question I was asking here was, when should you bring him? And my note was, it's not that he's bad at all, he just plays a weird game that does cool stuff, but doing that cool stuff can take more thought or effort to translate into points, in my experience. It's also weird and kind of tricky to get your feel for him, because I think he actually plays better in the second half of the game. Because the later into the game you get, the cheaper it is to make his totem into a golem, and since it's a replace, not a summon, it still does scoring things. So you can be extra aggressive like we talked about with the Wind Golem. You kind of hope it dies turn 2 or late turn 3. Hopefully, and I did get this to happen a couple times, hopefully scoring Detonate or Ensnare with its demise markers.
Yep.
One of my favorite things to do was if you have Detonate or Ensnare as an option with something else that requires 1 marker somewhere, that is like, hey, be near it to stop it. Have it leap somewhere, drop a scheme, and be low enough on wounds that people are like, I just need to kill you. Cool, thanks. I will not cheat up, and you can kill me, and now you have 3 markers around you. Thanks for playing.
And remember that in a pinch, Kandara can kill him to reactivate, because it does not say Gamut, it says Elemental.
Yep. I didn't have that come up as an option, but I did have a recognition of that as an option to do. Or I didn't have a situation come up where that was the thing. And then you have it die, and then your next Essence activation, you have a fresh Wind Golem. Good job. So yeah, add that to Sandeep's demise of, hey, look, another Golem, and that crew can be very painful late game. And the way I found that works a lot, or works well in most cases, is you focus on getting your schemes early, so that later game you can just focus on murder and being a pain in the ass with whatever engagements and things you can with these somewhat more tankier golem pieces. That said, ultimately, my take on Font of Magic is he's good, he's weird, he's definitely got the higher skill floor and ceiling. I think he's a great option if someone wants to be like, I want to play Sandeep, I don't want to play anything else. He's a great generalist. He can do anything. You're going to need to practice more with Font of Magic to get the specifics down on when you want to bring him. But I do think that is, in his case, I think that's actually a boon, because that means that you are going to know, you're going to be able to fit him into more slots as far as matchups and pools and things, because he can kind of wiggle to fit whatever slot you need him to go into. Meanwhile, Quiet Flame is just fucking solid.
Yeah, I think Font's biggest sin is existing in the same faction that Colette does.
Yes.
Because everything that it seems like he'd be really good at, you just play Performer.
Yep.
But I do think it's, very feasible that, GG1, GG2, when things change up, very possible for him to find a niche that, someone else doesn't cover, because he does some pretty interesting things.
Yeah. I'm really hoping for that and some other keywords that either the next GG or the one following has something that really makes summoners have a bread and butter reason to go there on the regular, as opposed to more often than not being a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Like, if there's a killy strat that doesn't actively punish, speed bump summons, then Font pops off, I think. But the way Recover specifically works is it just doesn't for him.
Yeah. Especially since most of his summons, other than the golem happenings, they're not even speed bumps.
Yeah. You sneeze at them and they die. And even if you turn them into golems, a 6 health golem is going to die. It's not really that hard.
Yeah, the ice golem less so long as you got that scheme marker nearby. But
Sure.
yes. Yeah, that's really all my takes on it. I had a lot of fun with this keyword, and I gotta say, the way I felt playing them, getting to learn them, this is the amount of excitement I had for Sandeep when he first came out in second ed, without the, I should put you on the shelf because I feel bad playing you into people. That said, if you pick up Sandeep, and you start playing Quiet Flame, if you want your opponent to have a good time, and they haven't seen them before, make sure you fucking tell them he's going to get into you. If you bubble up at all, you're either never going to see a card again, or you are going to watch your models physically melt in front of you. Because yeah, even some games against my locals, I told them that once I realized exactly how spicy it was, and it didn't matter. Like, they were playing their game, they weren't thinking about that first and foremost, and I was still just like, cool, we're going into turn 3, you have 3 models left.
Well, and
are you having a good time?
You have any number of ways to get Sandeep up the board, the fastest of which is Banasu, which just tosses him 10, and then Arcane Storm is another 10. I mean, it can be an immediate threat. It doesn't take setup.
Yeah. Well, and then you add in, if I have Kudra, she can also be there right away, and for whatever reason, in my experience, more people look at her and go, she is the immediate threat, which, don't get me wrong, she is a pain in the ass. She will cause you annoyance and will beat the crap out of stuff if you let her. But I've, for whatever reason, have seen more people try to focus her down than Sandeep, and it just allows him to do more of what he wants to do in the meantime instead of putting pressure on.
He just goes unchecked at that point.
Mm-hmm. Doug, you had a thought.
I did.
I think it was about target numbers being painful and watching your models melt.
I was one of the 10 games that was on the receiving end of that, and honestly, I don't know if you warned me ahead of time or not, but it was a case of Frontier is just absolute dog shit into that kind of playstyle. Their stats are garbage, and they need to bubble up. So there's really nothing I could have done in that game.
They're largely relying on cover for reduction, right? And cover doesn't do anything against this.
That wasn't it. It was just there's cover wouldn't have done a whole ton because I know Sandeep's turns took like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, it was one of my earlier ones.
Because there was a lot of 50mm bases, and pulses off those is hitting 4 or 5 models sometimes. That's just a really bad matchup, and I do think that Frontier needs some help. But
I agree.
So I'm not over here saying that he needs to be fixed or any sort of thing. But that it is absolutely brutal if you don't bring some kind of help or tech into it. And I mean, Frontier doesn't really have that, but I'm sure other people have some way of being able to, like, I need to separate. I need to be really good at this. Like, that's at least the nice thing about MNSU is that you have a decent number of unionized models. Getting positive flips on those willpower checks is a lot.
Your odds go up dramatically to just eat it.
Yeah.
Also your
go ahead.
Your stats are better too.
Yeah. I also do have a note here, Doug. The game that we played was the game that I consistently had either the empowerable tome for Arcane Storm to get arc off of, and or had a 10 of tomes to get arc off of, and add the slow if you fail the duel. So yeah, you got, I think, the worst brunt of it of any of my opponents.
Might have made the game go past like effectively turn 2, but I mean, to be fair, like I would not have been able to attack against it because I'm still learning the keyword, and also I genuinely wanted to try out Envy and the Ice Golem, and I still think in theory those are good picks as versatile takes, but they didn't really get to do anything that game.
Yeah. Although I have
nothing really did.
Yeah, no, the irony of giving the Ice Golem slow made me cackle.
I did learn that double Ostringers is a bad idea.
Is it?
So yes. I mean, especially when your entire front line is locked down and not doing anything, but they are very much support models, and running them and trying to scheme with them when they are extremely squishy and just have a gun so they can't even punch you is... Yeah.
It's rough. I've played a handful of Frontier games, but literally a handful, so...
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, well, the second I can finally get my game in with Nate and the Practical Dice guy, I'll be able to report on it, because I'm technically at 10, but I'm not counting some games for certain reasons. So I guess I technically could, but I also just want Nate to be a part of the recording. It'd be nice if he got to play me, because Roman got to play me. Yeah, I have thoughts on Frontier, but this isn't the Frontier. No, that's what I want to know. Okay, so general recommendations for going up against this crew that you two suggest. Okay, this sounds utterly brutal, and I'm afraid to go up against it. How do you beat this crew?
Anything that ignores your magic shield is going to severely hamper this. For
basically everything has some version of like Aegis or...
Well, the ones that have a magic shield, yes. That said, your secondary thing, if you have to pick one or the other, if you could ignore the physical shields, you're turning off the butterfly jumps. And that by itself can cause some issues for Kudra and the Wind Golem, depending on how people are using them. So yeah, teching in... Oh, and you're also ignoring the hard to kill on the Shastars then, too.
I would say in general, in my mind, the thing that you're teching against is more going to be Quiet Flame. I don't think there's a lot of font players out there at the moment, and I don't know quite how you pick that part apart. I guess we look at Longshanks and see.
Onda Magic has 69 games. Nice. At a 52% win rate, he's doing better than Quiet Flame.
How many games does Quiet Flame have?
78. So
it's
only a few
closer
more
than I would have thought. All right. Anyway, I think as Roman has talked about, Quiet Flame's secret primary goal is hit your hand. Mm-hmm. Whether that is for Arcane Storm to rip you apart, or, in my opinion, so you can't resist Mantra of Rebuke. Mm-hmm. Anything you can do to... there's not a lot of options in most crews to, let me just hire in some card draw. That's not really an option a lot of crews have. But maybe you bring a couple extra stones for that resupply on your totem. Or maybe you're just a lot more careful with, empowering this duel that doesn't really matter. You should save your cards as much as you can, so you have the option to stop when I really do want something to go through.
Yeah.
Maybe tech into positive flips, because card draw is such a rare thing nowadays.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
that'd be a good one.
Use those to not cheat cards. You need to have cards in hand against the mantra, or you're gonna you can't stop it. It's just unresisted movement at that point. And whether it's an informants marker, or knocking you into an ensnare, or just getting something unengaged that wants to interact. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why that can be bad if you can't stop it when you need to.
Yeah. And on a similar note, outside of that mantra, on Arcane Storm, if I'm doing that 2-3 times in activation, especially maybe even up to 4 if I'm getting the arc trigger to do it again off of somebody else, if you're having that potentially happen to you, if you can handle the damage coming in, don't cheat it unless you absolutely need to, until they get the raise to give you slow.
Yeah, because that's the spicy one.
Yeah. Now, granted, they could get that multiple times, but that means they're flipping or cheating 10s, which is kind of turning the hand or card pressure back on the Sandeep player. Because of the insight, especially with Quiet Flame, the hand pressure for hitting their target numbers is less than some other crews I've seen, but they do still have them. So they really want to put more hand pressure on you through those target numbers than they want to give themselves. So if you can cheat at the right time to lessen that impact by saying, hey, I'm not getting that slow, but I'll take the couple damage from the ones before that. That's fine. Is the other way to look at that. Also, I know this is kind of like saying just play good stuff, but if you can stun them, they can't take signature actions. Or they can't take them as signatures anyway, which lessens their possibility of doing the mantras, etc.
The other thing I've found that has made a big difference in my games, beyond, say you've already hired, you've lost your opportunity to counterattack. This is just onboard decisions. Understanding if your crew has a better path forward of killing the speed bumps or ignoring them. They're gonna summon a lot of gammon. If you have easy ways to deal with them that don't detract from the rest of your game plan, do it. They spend actions summoning them. They want them on the board for something, whether it's Kandara's reactivations or triggering demises at the right time or, whatever it is. But understand that if you can't do it efficiently, it's better just not to do it. Kill the things that actually matter, that are summoning the gammon or using them for something or are going to be scoring points.
Yep.
And then, that's a pretty high skill requirement and game sense requirement of knowing, do I have the tech to do it easy or should I ignore it? But I think that's one of the biggest decisions you can make that'll let you have a little bit easier time. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, I think learning that, I think it'll differ depending on crew to crew, but learning that going into any summoner is a good skill to
sure, this is not unique to Sandeep, but because he's one of the I summon a lot of little terrible things, I think it's even more important to make that call early, and you don't have to commit to it, but you should be making a decision and not just kind of by default killing them when maybe you don't need to. Because it's just as good to block line of sight from Kandara to a gammon than to kill the gammon, because she still can't kill it then to reactivate. There's other ways to do this.
Yeah, especially if you're blocking line of sight by charging between them and hitting Kandara.
Right. But I've had games where people are sending Euripides is killing gammon. I'm like, brother, you are making the wrong decision here. You need to not be doing this.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if this was mentioned when I dropped, or if you even noticed that I dropped. Because I drop every single recording now. It's just a thing
Nice.
I do. If you have access to anti-demise,
there's not a lot of it in the game, but
I feel like
can
that's
that make
probably
a
a
big
good
difference?
tech pick. Oh no, did I drop again?
I think Doug has dropped again. He's frozen.
I think Doug dropped again. Yep. He's a frozen boy. Yeah, no, that is. What is that on? Like 4 models in the game now, or something?
If it's even 4.
Yeah.
So it's rare tech, but if you've got it, I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially against Font, so you can kill him without getting a golem out. Yeah, lots of stuff like that. I'm trying to think of what else. What has a lot of Lucius? Lucius has a good amount of card draw still, like I think.
Yeah, but I mean, in theory, you won't know that you're playing against Sandeep. I'm thinking of like you've declared and then you see you're against Sandeep. You're not like, you don't know you're playing someone soloing Sandeep for the day, because that always changes the math a lot.
Yep. Very, very much. Random thought over on my end. Between this and Wong, being the first and 10 I did, the just play style of let me cause a ton of target numbers to just kind of wear you down over time is definitely one I'm finding. It's still interesting because it's interactive and the different crews do it for different reasons. but I'm kind of wondering if, as kind of a side effect of Weird reducing the number of things that cause like a lot of target numbers, if that means there's fewer crews, and also reducing the amount of draw, if that means there's fewer crews that can kind of handle that kind of play style, so it feels more consistent.
No, because I haven't found the oops all TNs to work well in my experience, but that might just be, the people I play against don't play crews that bubble that much, or,
Yeah.
It's a big game. There's a lot of different crews. You're not going to play against all of them all the time.
Yeah. Well, and also, I don't think you and I had talked about this specifically, is if there's a situation where, like, I don't know, Sandeep or Banasuva is near one or two models, but there's a third one that's not too far out, and I have a Windgammon, or I have the Wind Golem, and it's not doing 6 other things that I need it to do to score things, saying, hey, that thing is moving in to get into the Sandeep bubble, or the Banasuva bubble, I've definitely found that to help the process, because I'm usually just going, I want Sandeep to be over here, where he's maybe holding an informant, but I can move people to the other side of him where they're not, and they're still in the pulse zone of all your cards are belong to us. Yeah. That definitely helps that play style.
Yeah, he's on my list of things that I need to get a couple more games in. I've been playing other things lately, post-Decepticon. Once I swap back into Arcanist, I should try that. I'm like, okay, my goal this game is abuse Arcane Storm. Let's make it happen and kind of get the other perspective on it.
Yep.
But I think the cool thing is you and I, again, have apparently completely different ways to play him, and we're both doing well with him. That's a good sign for someone who, like you said, if you want to pick a master and Arcanist to just do them, I'd argue Karis might still be a better one trick, but Sandeep's he's up there too. He's a very, very good option for that, and actually has 2 playable titles, which is nice.
Yeah. This, actually, what you just said made me think of something that was a timing weirdness that I don't know, 4 or 5 games in, looked up and was like, oh, that's actually better than I thought. So in addition to the Mantra of Rage, which is whenever he prepares, doesn't have to gain insight from it, whenever he prepares, you cause that 15 defense 2-inch pulse or be dealt 2 damage. The other trick is, if he is targeted with an attack action, if he has an insight token, the attacking model's duel cannot be cheated. But here's the thing, that step comes before your decision to use the insight to look at the card that's coming up. So he can kind of double dip on that of, well, I have this insight, you cannot cheat this. I'm also going to use it to see what's coming up, at which point I will not have the insight, but you still can't cheat against me, because I had it when you targeted me. Yeah. Then if he takes damage, he gets another one back.
I never caught that. That's a fun little timing quirk.
Yeah, no, that was one where the first time I played it, first couple times I played it, I just assumed, I didn't look at the timing close enough. I'm like, you got to pick one or the other of these, right? No, you get both.
Yeah. And the other thing is, this will probably be kind of buried in the end where a few people are listening. We should have talked about this in the crew card section, but the elemental shielding, I think for me, is the single most forgotten ability in the game.
It's up there.
It's really important. It's really good insight generation. It's defensive tech, it's offensive tech, it's use your mantra tech. Like, it's so important to how the crew works. And I just will go entire games where I don't use it because I forgot. So as you're learning this crew, just circle it big, remind yourself however you can. I don't understand why it's such a blind spot, but I've talked to other Sandeep players who also just forget it every single time.
The thing I found helped me with that was thinking more specifically about the insight and going, oh, I should use this defensively.
Yeah.
Just because it massively helps the crew, and you kind of get to, again, double dip on your insight of, okay, I used it. Worst case, I get hit anyway and I get it back. And that's kind of where I developed the core of the crew, going, okay, Wind Golem, Kandara, and with that Sandeep Banasuva, you already have 3 beefy elementals that as long as you have one of them within 6 of you, or if you're one of them, you need another one of them within 6 of you, that's not super bubbly. You just have to think about it on where do I want these folks to be.
You need to be intentional with your movement, not move 6.5 inches away on accident.
Yep, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, that's actually another thing I'd call out. While Banasuva tossing Sandeep up 10 inches is great, make sure if you're doing that you have plans to have either Banasuva move up after him and short that a little bit so you can still be within 6 of Sandeep. Short Sandeep tossing, rather. Or have another elemental nearby so Sandeep can use his insight and then get it back. Because otherwise, the one time I think I lost him early in the game was because I got too aggressive with him and he got pulled into Linder's Cadmus crew.
That's a bad time.
I still won that game. I don't know how, but I did. But yeah, he died, I think, mid-turn 2. He was a bastard to get rid of, but I didn't have a way to get him out.
You can ping him to death, for sure.
Absolutely. But yeah, make sure you're thinking intentionally about where your elementals are going so that you can get your insight back.
And, counter tech for opponent is if you see that intentional positioning, mess with it. Screw it up. Kill the linchpin model that's giving everyone in the crew elemental shielding, or just misplace them. Like, one good lure could wreck everything.
Mm-hmm. Or if they're playing at the edge of that 6 inches, one good, not reposition, but one good trigger that moves them just an inch or 2.
Yep.
Cool, you're outside of 6 inches now. I'm going to beat everybody else to death with a brick.
What else we got?
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah.
I think that's actually probably a good place to stop it, especially since my net connection seems to be dropping for no fucking reason. It's a Sunday afternoon. Whatever. I'm not the important person here. I'm just the host. All right. Now that's. I think that's a pretty darn good coverage of academic, and we kept it under 2 hours.
Yay!
Given
job,
me and Roman
job
talking about Arcanist, that's quite a feat.
That is. I think that means we get a gold star on our report.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. Anyways, thank you for listening to our wonderful First and 10. We'll see you next time. Hopefully with Frontier, not someone else besides Roman doing these, please. All right. Thank you for being the true host of this, Roman.
I do what I can as a substitute teacher, Doug.
And thank you for being our expert, Cole.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
All right, and thank you, listeners, and we'll see you hopefully at Good Things Happen or the next recording, whatever happens first. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Wait, no, wait. Do I do that send-off in First and 10? I don't remember. Anyway, fun is always king. There we go.
Yay.
Gotta remember that. We're doing this for 10 years and forgetting things.
You're a consummate professional, Doug.
Bye.
Songs used in this production are Villainous Treachery and 5-Card Shuffle. All music is created by Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.